Hello, welcome to PlayStation Access. My name's Rob, and welcome back to the Tuesday Checklist. Every week we take inspiration from a recent or upcoming release to spark a conversation about some of our favourite gaming moments. With the incredible Shadow of the Colossus remake hitting PS4 this week, we've been revisiting one of our all-time favourites and marvelling at the incredible fur textures, but also remembering how very sad we felt after we'd killed each majestic creature, before killing the next one obviously. Anyway, this got us thinking about all the bosses we faced in video games that didn't really deserve the death we dealt them. Dave is first, talking about our headline act.
I have the pleasure of starting this week's episode because I think I know that it's the grandfather of this topic for this video. I don't think anyone could feel any differently if they've ever played Shadow of the Colossus. It's an amazing, amazing game. Very lucky that it's been remastered and it's now on PS4. And I'm playing it a second time on PS4 at the moment. But it is a weird experience because the game is basically a series of boss fights, which is great and a really interesting idea actually. Even more interesting is, unlike most other bosses, apart from the ones in this video, the Colossi should they be the subject of my dislike of my sword? Exactly. And I would argue probably not. They seem, if I'm going to narrow it down, let's just talk about the very first one, because the very first one is it's the first time you see a Colossus, and it's particularly just minding its own business, just roaming the plains. I think it even just walks past you, like when you first see it, it's this big moment, you kind of come out of a little rocky sort of valley, and the first Colossus is revealed as it walks past, and it just sort of ignores you, and I think as far as I'm aware, you have to kind of like get its attention, you sort of strike the first blow, however that is, whether you sort of start climbing on it or whether you fire an arrow into it or whatever, and it's just really sad and mournful. They're just very big, slow moving creatures, often soft, like covered in fur, which for some reason is slightly more appealing to us than scales or the like.
Smooth, I wouldn't mind.
If they were smooth, you'd be up for it. Yeah. But they're not, and they all inhabit different environments, a lot like the Muppets, and it's just weird. It's just weird that you have no real sort of understanding of what it is you're doing. You just know you have to kill them, and to kill them is really horrible. And the actual act of striking a blow is really visceral. It's really horrible. You have to grab on and raise your sword really high, and then bring it plummeting down, and you have to hold the button down to properly raise up your sword. It's not just you can like button mash or anything. It's like every blow you have to really think about, and when you hit them, they writhe with pain. And they sort of, I don't know that you'd call it bleeding, but they kind of expel a sort of a black smoke, which just, it seems like it should stay on the inside. They certainly seem to agree that it should stay on the inside. And it's just really quite horrible and sad. And when they topple, you get this sort of, a little bit of a cutscene as they topple and they properly like hit the earth. And then you are kind of invaded or like infected by the black smoke. It's like a spirit, like a black spirit sort of infiltrates your body and in a way that looks painful, and you kind of fall to the ground and then just wake up back at this sort of shrine. I don't know, it's I should say I've never actually finished Shadow of the Colossus, so I have not found out whether I'm being whether this sort of worry, this concern is founded or not, and I don't expect you to tell me, but I'm just saying that's how I feel about it, and it's all a bit weird, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a bit of a ruse and maybe I'm the bad guy.
So for a boss that I don't think deserved to be killed is from a game I haven't actually played, but I did actually work on the game, which is why it's quite important to me. And it's actually Sif the Great Grey Wolf from Dark Souls. Now, for anyone who's not played Dark Souls, so I'm looking at Rob and Dave.
Yeah.
I played it.
Where have you? I didn't realise.
Oh, finished it.
Okay, well, I mean, I haven't played it at all, so there you go. So Sif is one of the bosses you have to fight in Dark Souls. Now, some bosses in Dark Souls are optional, and what's a little bit cool here is that this one is not optional. You have to defeat Sif to move on. And it's like an absolutely horrific take on the famous story of Hachiko in Japan, the dog that waited for its master.
Oh, the statue's there. By the train
Statue,
station.
yeah, by the train station.
I was going to make a joke like it's not that famous, but I mean, apparently it is.
You never heard of Hachiko?
What are you talking about?
Hachiko is this famous dog that waited for its master every single day outside of the station in
real.
Shibuya. And it was real. And then eventually the dog passed away. But there's actually a statue, and the statue is a famous meeting place for people to go meet at the Hachiko statue.
It's actually a famous selfie place for people to go and have selfies.
I had no selfies, but Dave did take a picture for me.
Well, that's also true.
So Sif is kind of the really twisted Dark Souls version of that. So Otorius was Sif's owner, and Otorius went into the abyss. Sif and Otorius went into the abyss to try and defeat the evil, and sadly the evil overcame them, and Otorius sacrificed himself by dropping his shield to try and protect the puppy Sif. So Sif has waited at its master's grave for years and years, and you go into the Darkroot Garden, and Sif basically just tries to protect Otorius's grave, takes Otorius's great sword, and that's what it fights you with. And in fact, even as you, unlike actually, as you get through most Dark Souls bosses, they phase change, so they tend to become more powerful and aggressive as you drain their health. On the flip side, Sif starts whimpering and limping. It's actually a really horrific battle, because it's literally like killing a puppy. It is really horrible. It gets more horrible. If you play the Otorius the Abyss Walker DLC, your character actually goes into the abyss, and it's actually set before the main Dark Souls game. You go into the abyss and you actually find Sif in there. And if you protect Sif from the monsters, Sif will actually help you finally defeat the darkness that Otorius tried to defeat all those years ago, and will actually help you in the final battle. Now, if you do this bit of DLC before you meet Sif in the main game, when you then go back, Sif will recognise you, and you'll have this moment of like, you're the one that, you helped me, you helped defeat what Otorius wanted to defeat, and you saved me, but you still got to take down Sif, the Great Grey Wolf, too. It's horrible.
It's a bit of a cul-de-sac, that area as well. Why don't you just leave him?
And it's a beautiful area. It is Sif is, we don't know, but Sif is a Norse female name, so everyone assumes that Sif is a female. But yeah, it's in the beautiful, it's in the Darkroot Basin, Darkroot Garden, I believe. Someone will correct me in the comments, I'm sure. But it's also a really beautiful area, which makes it even more horrific. And yeah, you feel like, do I have to go here? It's not on the path. Yeah, but you have to do it. The game makes you defeat Sif, and it's horrible actually.
So a video game boss that I think really didn't deserve to die is the boss from Metal Gear Solid 3.
We haven't played that one. Spoilers now, we understand.
We only know about the first one.
You don't even know who this character is.
We'll see. We'll see.
Who is it?
The boss is framed early on in Metal Gear Solid 3 as this, she's Big Boss's mentor, you play as Big Boss, and about an hour or so into the game, she betrays you, apparently, and joins the Russians, who are developing this. Metal Gear Solid 3 is a prequel, so it was set in 1964 during the Cold War. And
I didn't know any of this.
and
you not watch any Friday features?
So the boss is on the side that is developing like the first ever prototype Metal Gear. So the first one that's ever been created, this new form of nuclear weapon. And you go through the entire game. She's like a half villain. She sort of appears every now and again, kicks your ass, but doesn't kill you. And you're thinking, I know she's betrayed me, but you can tell there's something else going on there. She's sort of guiding you still, even though she's kicking your ass and telling you to go home. You can tell she's sort of underneath that going, come on. And then right at the very end, I'll try to spoil as little as possible. There's another big plot twist, and it turns out that she wasn't as bad as she was made out, and her actions were forced upon her. And it's a very tragic story. The boss's story is very tragic, and obviously because you're under orders and she's under her orders. You have to fight right at the very end. And it's this amazing fight. You've had this climactic battle with Metal Gear, and you think it's over, you've escaped, and you find yourself in this like flowery meadow with the boss, and the music's all soft and gentle, and you're forced to fight her. And then at the end, as she's lying on the floor, there's like this cutscene where you're standing over her with just a gun, and the game just pauses and waits for you to input the final command to pull the trigger. And it's very, very sad.
Yeah. It's the problem about the sad entries in this week's things, that they're really sad, aren't
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't really be funny about it.
they? No.
I tell you what, though, I think, and that's that they got the names wrong, because really Big Boss should be the mentor of the boss. I think.
No, but Big Boss... I always like thinking about
Someone
this.
said, I've got a meeting today. Who's it with? The boss or the big boss? Oh, it's with Big Boss.
That's not so bad.
Big Boss. Big Boss is not called Big Boss until he beats the boss, and then he is granted the title of Big Boss,
Okay.
which is obviously them kind of digging themselves out of a creative hole they made. Right when they made Metal Gear, the very first one that was on, like, you know, before PlayStation even came out, 1987, 1986, I think it came out. Kojima was obviously coming up with these characters. You know, your hero's called Solid Snake. That's a cool code name. What's the bad guy called? I don't know. Big Boss. Is the boss Big Boss? It's like a children's name for a character, isn't it? It's like in Harry Potter, where Albus Dumbledore is like the supreme mugwump or something in the very first book. It's just a childish name. But then in book 7, they have to carry on with this charade of him being, he was the supreme mugwump, blah, 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 blah. So they have to keep these childish names in place and somehow make them work into a more adult fiction.
I think it's more like that's what they were just calling him around the office. Like, oh, have you done the Big Boss level? The one with the Big Boss. And they were like, no, I haven't done it. And they just stuck. And they were like, look, I think he is Big Boss now. That's just it.
Yeah.
I would have called him Boss Killer.
Boss Killer.
Boss. Yeah.
It's weird
Kill
how,
the boss. I
how
want to know more.
the term Big Boss has just sort of transcended its own childish absurdity, and it's just become the name now. You don't think about it. You don't think to yourself, that's a stupid name. It's just, he's Big Boss.
Yeah.
Maybe next week we should do what names we'd give bosses. I think Mike Bullets would be a good
Mike Bullets.
for Big Boss.
Yeah. Gary Fist.
Gary Fist.
Yeah.
That's a silly name, isn't it?
He's transcended the silly name now.
Yeah.
He is Gary Fist.
I should admit I've cheated on this question. It's not so much a boss that I didn't want to kill, but it's the end of a game and it's a series of people. Well,
right.
so my answer is at the end of The Last of Us. It's all of the Fireflies. I didn't think that I should have murdered them all and killed them all and doomed humanity to not understanding the virus that was wiping out. I thought that was wrong. And so Joel at the end of The Last of Us, if anybody hasn't seen it or played it,
It's a bit late now.
but it was for the room.
Right.
Joel brings Ellie all the way to the Fireflies medical facility so that they can experiment on her to kind of find out why she's resistant to the fungus, which has wiped out everything. And then he realizes that she's going to have to be killed in order to do that because they're going to have to cut her brain to pieces. And then he kind of goes, no. And then he murders literally everybody there and walks out with Ellie. And I think that was bad. And I didn't want to do it at the time.
I've done it.
You'd have done it.
Yeah.
Is this a dad thing now? Or?
No,
I just thought about my kids. No, I'd have definitely done it. What am I talking about? Yeah, but it was your kid.
sacrifice.
What, you would have doomed humanity if it had been Jay?
Oh, mate, probably, yeah. You know what I mean? I really like Jay.
He's got a lot to answer for.
Yeah, he has. I've really pulled the rug out from under my own answer here. But when I was playing...
Somewhere, like, you know, Bruce Straley is just like rubbing his hands, just like, he understands.
Yeah.
He understands.
But I get that the game was supposed to make you feel like that relationship was so important. That, and, you know, not just that individual relationship, but that people do that. But I also thought, you know, well, it's a bit of a waste, isn't it?
What I really like, though, is that I feel a lesser game would have given you the choice. And I like that it didn't. And that's the story.
But it does open up that question, because I felt, and everyone talked about how incredible the next section was of the game. And, you know, don't get me wrong, was more glued to this game than probably anything else on PS3. I thought it was incredible. But that next scene where they're walking together and she kind of checks with him, where they're like, was everything really all right there? Because we didn't say goodbye to anyone. That was weird. And he's like, yes. And everyone's like, that was so. And I was like, that whole thing was sort of overridden for me by the fact that I just murdered like dozens of people, innocent people.
You don't have to murder the doctors at the end, they do in the actual operating theatre.
You do.
I thought you didn't have to do that.
No,
You have to kill one of them, I think.
You probably don't.
Right.
I felt I needed, once I'd done one.
I did. Don't get me wrong.
I killed them all.
I just felt like it's not my place to choose, you
Not
know.
just
So
the
once
men,
I
but
popped
the
one,
women and the children.
They're like
Are you-
animals.
are you going to do prequel memes every Tuesday from now on then? Yeah, so that's my one. I don't think I felt bad about. The only other bosses I ever feel bad about. My other answer was I didn't think anyone would like it. It was Coach from Stickbold. I didn't like that Coach betrayed you and then became the devil. So
That's a great one.
well, it's too late now because I've chosen the
We've got
Fireflies.
capture of that.
I was going to say,
Stop it! You're showing everyone how the
Stickbold
sausage is
capture.
made. But yeah, Stickbold, that was sad because he's quite funny, Coach. I liked him, and he kind of seemed a bit loose in an avuncular
because he's
Nordic
your
way.
character,
Yeah,
you
people
feel
don't
more
won't
of an
know that he's
attachment
your
to him.
character.
I probably do. He is
Like,
my
'cause I
character.
would have no qualms about killing Coach if he turned into like an evil devil coach.
we've had no qualms about killing anyone so far.
You
That's true.
shouldn't have
Maybe
any.
if it was Devil Monica, then I would feel a bit different.
I'd forgotten that Coach was my character.
You wouldn't feel different if she was going. You'd absolutely end her. The boss. We know who the boss is.
No, you don't. Who's the boss
he's
then?
The boss.
The genetic.
You've
already got it wrong.
She,
Dave
I
knows.
said the genetic.
You said he's the.
Oh, okay.
She's Snake's like a mentor.
So you have played Metal Gear Solid 3?
No, I played Metal Gear Solid 1, and they talk about it in the dialogue.
Do they?
Yeah,
You were listening more than.
definitely. Say about this bit's about the boss in there, haven't they?
I don't think there are.
Yeah, I think there is.
Am I going mad? Are there references to the boss in Metal Gear Solid 1?
Yeah. I'm
When?
sure there is. I'm sure there is. No, maybe there isn't. Well, maybe it's Big Boss.
Did
It's Big Boss, isn't it? No, I've not been on Wikipedia.
They talk about Big Boss all the time.
Yeah, because Big Boss is
The boss is Big Boss's mentor.
Yeah. Maybe I got it from Metal Gear Solid 5, which I have played.
I was going to say, if they have references to the boss in Metal Gear Solid 1, which I'm
Probably
now only
not.
99.9% sure they don't, then that's going to have blown my mind.
Probably not then.
Anyway, we've gone on a
Cool.
tangent there.
Yeah.
You know what, Dave? For one horrifying moment there, I thought I was wrong about Metal Gear. I'd have had to retire. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let us know what bosses you felt didn't deserve their grisly fate in the comments, and join us again next week for another Tuesday checklist.